Hey, welcome to part one of my message for this week. The message itself is called Awaiting the Oil. And I'm going to be talking a lot about the anointing that God has over your life and how you have to wait and await God for that. And then also, part one specifically is going to be called The Difference in Debts. We'll be looking at Luke 16, verses 1 through 8. I'll be breaking down that parable, and then I'll be kind of explaining the context and then providing the meaning, at least the meaning from my perspective of what that parable has to tell us. I hope you guys enjoy it, and I will see you back for part two. Bye. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and hop into Haggai 2, verse 19. This is the last time we'll be looking at this verse. I think I've pretty much memorized it at this point. I don't know about you guys, but it's still, every single time I read it, it just gets me fired up, especially that last part. So here we go. I'm just going to read it. Is there yet any seed left in the barn until now? The vine and the fig tree, the pomegranate and the olive tree have not borne fruit. From this day on, I will bless you. So powerful, so good. I love it. All right, so if you guys can flip with me to Luke 16, verses 1 through 8. Right here is a parable that Jesus spoke to a group of people. He used it as a teaching, and I think that it's something that really, at least hadn't been explained to me before. I didn't get to learn the context and the background of it until I took a New Testament religious studies course this year. So I'm hoping to share some of that knowledge that I learned with you guys, because I think it really helped me out while I was going through and reading this and trying to understand it. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into Luke 16, verses 1 through 8, and then I'll explain a little bit afterwards. It says, Jesus told his disciples, "There was a rich man whose manager was accused of wasting his possessions. So he called him in and asked, 'What is this I hear about you? Give an account of your management, because you cannot be manager any longer.' The manager said to himself, 'What shall I do now? My master is taking away my job. I'm not strong enough to dig, and I'm ashamed to beg. I know what I'll do so that when I lose my job here, people will welcome me into their homes.' So he called in each one of his master's debtors. He asked the first, 'How much do you owe my master?' 800 gallons of olive oil,' he replied. The manager told him, 'Take your bill, sit down quickly, and make it 400. Then he asked the second, 'And how much do you owe?' 1,000 bushels of wheat,' he told him. 'Take your bill and make it 800. The master commended this dishonest manager because he had acted shrewdly. For the people of this world are more shrewd in dealing with their own kind than are the people of the light.'" So here, this is talking about, there's two key people, really one key person, which is the manager. And the manager here is talking about this oil and the bushels of wheat that these people owe his master. So pretty much how this would work is the master was such a rich man that he didn't need to do any of the work. He had already earned everything that he had, so he could have other people manage his things for him. So when it came to things like debt collectors, right, which is what this manager was essentially, he's there trying to collect the master's debt for him. It almost worked in the way as a tax collector did. So there was a set tax that the Roman Empire needed. So what the tax collectors do would tax a little bit above that amount so that they could pocket some money. So one reason why tax collectors and managers like this were so looked down upon in the society is because a lot of the times they would be corrupt. So if the manager was only charging a $50 tax, let's just say, I'm not sure, but let's say he was charging about a $50 tax, these people would be charging $150 for the tax, keeping the $100 and then giving the $50 like they're supposed to. So a lot of people look down upon them because this is how they made their living. They made their living off of being corrupt. So here, somebody figured out that this manager was corrupt and that he needed to be fired because it was technically illegal to do it, but only if you got caught, which that kind of happens today too. It's only illegal if you get caught, right? But so he gives this message, or he gets this message from his master that says, look, man, you've lost your job. You've screwed these people over, and I can't deal with that. That can't be on my name, so I'm going to have to fire you. So the manager does what he should have been doing a while ago, and he goes up to these people and says, okay, how much do you owe my master? And let me make this right. Because if I'm going to be fired, I might as well be in a better place than I was before. So he goes and then he makes it right. He cuts the 800 gallons of olive oil into 400. He overcharged by 400 gallons of olive oil. And then he goes to the man with the bushels of wheat and says, take your 1,000 bushels of wheat and cut it down. And cut it down to 800. He charged 200 barrels more. So there's two main things that we can take from this. And we can look at it from the perspective of the debtor or from the perspective of the manager. So I'm going to start with the perspective of the manager. And I want to give you guys the assurance that even when you do wrong in your life, even when you do things that you aren't proud of, even when you do things that you don't want other people to find out about, eventually when they find out, because eventually people do find out, eventually when they find out, God will give you a second chance. God is our master who is able to lend out 800 gallons of olive oil and 1,000 bushels of wheat, and God has the ultimate storehouse. And it's never ending, but when you are his manager and then you go and mess up his name, he will always give you a chance to come back to him. The master here, remember when this person made everything right, he said that he was proud, he was happy with the way that the manager acted. Even though he didn't do right the first time, God will always give you that next chance. God will never run out of giving you chances if you just continue to turn back to him. And then let's take it from the debtor's perspective, because we're all debtors to God. God has done so much for us. Even if you don't see it in that perspective, God has done so much for you, and I really encourage you to look at what he has done. Don't focus on what you think he hasn't done or what you think he did wrong, but look at your life and see what he has done for you. And I want to let you know that what other people expect from your debt, that's not what God expects from your debt. People might be putting one weight on you, but God only expects you to turn back to him. He only expects you to give back what he brought his son down for you to live by. And through Jesus, we're able to pay back this debt. We're able to turn our lives over to God, and we're able to pay this debt back in full. And while other people might be expecting so much more from us and so much more from our lives, it's only what matters to God that's important. And I think that's two big things that we can take from this. So before we move on, before we move into the next part, I really want to spend just a little short amount of time, kind of explaining the background of olives and olive oil. So, dating back to about 500 BC in Greece, it was known mainly as a symbol of peace. Um, and in the Bible, it is used a lot for peace, but also in the Bible, it is used as God's approval and also the end of conflict. So we can take that, especially moving forward, um, as we go into the next parts. So, go ahead and move on, but I really want to stress to you guys how important that God will give you that second chance, and that God will always expect one thing from you that is different than what other people expect from you.